Hey, remember me? Um, yeah, I'm just going to finish up this outline here and then talk about a few things. So, happy Friday, happy Good Friday. Um, so I hope you know you're finding your artists. These are certainly ways that you could, and certainly ways that A&R people do. The last thing I was talking about was independent labels and how that's just not fruitful for major labels these days because what do artists on independent labels need? Um, just a whole lot of money. That's what you'd be paying if you're a major label. You'd have to pay millions of dollars to get pry somebody away from an independent label. That's not the way it used to be. It used to be that the independent label was a kiss of death because you couldn't get your records manufactured, enough records manufactured by a small label. You couldn't get them into stores. Um, you couldn't get paid. Independent labels never got paid because the record stores that bought their records and distributors would pay major labels first, and so independent labels would go out of business. So um, that's why John Prine started his own label. It's because it was so difficult to be dealing with independent labels. It was better for him to go out on his own. He was a trailblazer in that regard. Um, the next thing is contests, which have existed, almost throughout the entire 20th century up till now. And there were early contests on the radio. The first one was the Major Bose Hour, and that was a radio contest to try to develop and discover and develop talent. That's where Frank Sinatra was actually discovered. As we moved into the TV era, we had Ted Mack's Geritol Hour. It was sponsored by something for old people. It was on Sunday nights before Ed Sullivan, and we had a lot of people come out of that contest as well. And then it kind of went dormant for a good long period of time until Star Search came along. You guys are probably too young for Star Search, but that was a show that tried to find any kind of talent, almost like America's Got Talent. It had comedians and jugglers, but a lot of singers, a lot of musicians, and some early performers on that show were people like LeAnn Rimes and Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and many, many others. But of course, this all reached its peak with American Idol and the popularity that show had, and the ability for them to actually develop these artists into somebody who was going to be successful. And I think that there was a novelty aspect to it, of course, at first, but it was more than that. It was that if you watched some of these performers over a period of 8 or 12 weeks, however long the show went for, you developed an emotional connection to them as well as an admiration for the talent that they had. And they certainly chose wisely in the first few shows with Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood and a few others that went on to some success, but really haven't experienced that success since then. And the same has been true for other shows that have come on. Nashville Star, which was around for a while, and their first winner was Buddy Jewell, and he lasted for about 2 minutes. But Miranda Lambert was also on that show, and Chris Young, and some others. And then, I don't know, where's my outline? Dang. Hold on. Um, so now we have a bunch of those shows still. America's Got Talent and The Voice. The Voice is an ultra successful show that has not generated even one successful artist from their show. And you have to kind of wonder why that is, especially with the show being so popular. And maybe that's a subject, a thread we can have on, is why have these shows, and particularly The Voice, failed to generate any kind of successful artist over the last few years? So put that down in the discussion thread. Finally, of course, the main source that is used for A&Ring, and the luxury that you have that people in this class didn't have 20 years ago, is to go to the internet. And the internet has always been a very music-centric medium. So some of the early things that were on the internet is there was a thing called Taxi. You can still go to the site taxi.com, an A&R service, but really these A&R services that popped up on the internet were basically, hey, pay us some money and we'll shop your stuff. And Taxi's actually been around for 20 years and has made a lot of money, and I don't think it's gotten anybody a single record deal. However, they shifted their focus a little bit to music placement. So if you send them their songs, maybe you'll get into a Doritos commercial or an episode of a soap opera or something like that, but that's really all they've ever really accomplished. But I urge you to go and see what their pitch is. And there are many sites like them. Not many of them lasted. Taxi has been around for years and years. MySpace, I don't know if you're old enough for that, if Tom was ever your friend, but MySpace was really a music-centric site, way more than Facebook has ever become. And you put your songs up that you liked on your page, that you only had one page. You put your songs up there like a jukebox, and it was also a vehicle for artists to promote themselves. And so they had little search things where you go through indie artists and genre and stuff like that. And so it was very, very, very music-centric. Of course, that's no longer with us. YouTube, of course, is a huge, huge resource for A&R people. Some A&R people just spend all day on YouTube just looking at the things that are getting some action and going viral and stuff like that. And that doesn't always translate. There have been some people that have been born from places like YouTube, like Justin Bieber, that have achieved some incredible success. But then there's also people like, if we had a class, if we were actually in class, I'd show you Carmen. Do you remember Carmen? I would urge you to go and look up Carmen's version of that Chris Brown song, I'm getting paper, whatever the name of that song is. And it had a couple 100 million views, and I was like 2,000 of them because I thought it was just so amusing and funny the way this girl would rap. Anyway, the labels got into a bidding war for Carmen and ultimately had to pay millions of dollars, and they had one marginal hit song, and that's it, because the thing that made that video attractive was not the same kind of thing that would make an artist necessarily attractive long term. That is, there's a novelty aspect to some of the success that you find on things like YouTube, etc. OK Go, do you remember them with all their crazy videos? They can't sell records, they can't get streams, they can't even tour that successfully, but they can make videos that get a couple of 100 million views because they're just so interesting and novel. So that's really what the history lately has been of the internet, is that it really attracts novelty things. So it makes it very difficult for labels to determine whether that's going to translate or not, and it can cost millions and millions of dollars to sign some of these people, like that Arizona guy who does that Roxanne song that achieved some popularity on TikTok. $10 million advance for something like that. So YouTube, SoundCloud, of course, cutting edge. It's almost like the college radio of today in terms of trendsetters and people that are ahead of the curve. Tend to listen to some cool stuff that can emerge from there. So that's a very profitable source of new music. The streaming services and paying attention to people that are getting streams with very little promotion, just ending up on a playlist and people finding it attractive and listening to it over and over again, and people you've never heard of that get tens of millions of streams, and these people are all on the radar of A&R people. And then all kinds of social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or wherever you might look. You really got to have your finger on the pulse of that stuff to see not just artists that are being successful, but what's making those particular artists or particular songs successful, and what does it say about the culture and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, that's where you should be spending most of your time. Although you could have done any of these strategies, which is, you could have called up an attorney or a publisher or anybody and said, hey, what's the best unsigned act that you know of right now? And you would get some tremendous, tremendous responses from that. People at your internship, whoever it might be. Going out to clubs, can't do that. So certainly the internet is probably the most profitable place for you to go. All right, that's that. I'm throwing that away. Here's just some thoughts I've been having over the last couple of days. Have you been thinking? Because I certainly have. Number one, Gabe posted something about John Prine. I don't know if you saw the outpouring of emotion and sadness of him passing, and it really was way more than you might have imagined, given his level, his stature, his popularity, etc. He's a very niche kind of artist, but people felt some emotional connection to him, and I was no different. I'm not the hugest John Prine fan in the world. I'm a fan. I love him, but not the hugest. But it hit me profoundly because I don't know. I have like 3 really important memories, musical memories. 3 of my most profound musical experiences somehow involve John Prine, and I'm going to tell you what they are right now because you have to listen to me. Number one, when I was in college, my first year in college, in the dorms, University of Wisconsin, everybody always blaring their music on their biggest, baddest stereo systems and competing. And a guy across the hall from me, his name was Dan. I'm still friends with him 100 years later. He heard the music I was playing, which was, I told you I have the most pedestrian taste in the world. So I was playing Queen and Aerosmith and Fleetwood Mac, Pink Floyd, that sort of thing. And he came to me and said, "Hey, come here, let me turn you on to some really, really good music." And so he would play stuff like Joni Mitchell. But my biggest memory was him playing John Prine. And this was way back when. John Prine was not even on anyone's radar, but he was on the radar of Chicago. He was popular in Chicago, and my friend Dan was from Chicago, and he played the song Hello in there, and it just blew me away. And it changed the way I thought about music. It changed the way I listened to music. It changed the artists that I searched for. We didn't have an internet, but the kind of artist that I might be attracted to, which was singer-songwriter, and it changed my musical taste forever and ever and ever. So that was one big John Prine moment in my life, way back in the 70s. And then let's fast forward. I told you about that girl in my class who yelled at the class, didn't I? Did I tell you that story? And she ultimately got signed by Dave Cobb and became one of the Secret Sisters. I hope I told you that story. Anyway, she was playing the Ryman. I don't know if I told you the story. The Secret Sisters were playing the Ryman. They were opening for Amos Lee. And she invited me to come visit her and spend time with her backstage and watch the rehearsal, and which is always a thrill going backstage at the Ryman. And but it got to be a bigger thrill because this was the last night of their tour, and they wanted to do something special. And so Amos said to them, "Why don't we do Angel from Montgomery?" Because they were from Alabama, the Secret Sisters. And I said, "Okay, let's rehearse it." So they went up to his dressing room, and it was him and the Secret Sisters and the background singers for Amos Lee and me and my girlfriend and Dave Cobb and his wife sitting on the floor while these tremendously talented singers and artists rehearsed John Prine's song, Angel from Montgomery. And in the moment, I said to myself, this is one of the greatest musical moments I'll have in my entire life. Talented people backstage in a dressing room at the Ryman singing this beautiful, beautiful John Prine song. So that's number two. Number three, last year, the Americana Music Association and MTSU put on a tribute concert to John Prine at the Troubadour during Grammy Week in Los Angeles, and had a bunch of performers come and sing the greatest John Prine songs. It was just a parade of incredibly, incredibly talented people coming up and singing his songs. Dwight Yoakam, Margot Price, the Milk Carton Kids, Bob Weir, the Grateful Dead, Maria Moldauer, just tremendous performer after tremendous performer. And then somebody, you might want to look this up, somebody named Betty Levert, who covered one of John Prine's songs called Souvenirs, which is a beautiful, beautiful song, and sat on the floor and just, it was one of the most emotional musical performances ever. The place was just dead quiet as she sang this thing. There's a live version of her singing the song in Toronto or something like that that doesn't really capture what happened that night, but it might give you a little clue as to the amount of soul that she could put into this John Prine song. So that was just, I mean, we just stood there. Everybody's jaw was on the floor. And then at the end of the evening was John Prine doing a couple of his songs, and it was just, I was 2 feet away from him, and he was just amazing. He's a very nice man too. I mean, tremendous, tremendous guy. And then, so those are the three. But I did have a memory just this year again, and this is just a sampling of the John Prine memories, is that we did a tribute concert to Willie Nelson this year at the Troubadour, and John Prine was one of the performers, and he got up and he talked about his relationship with Willie and sang a couple of his songs, and it was just absolutely moving. I brought the students, and one of the students had a panic attack and I had to leave halfway through his second song, so I was absolutely crushed. But anyway, so I just saw him, I guess it's 2 months ago. It's crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So here's my John Prine spiel. Listen to his stuff. It's just so different, so different. And just the way he took snapshots of people's lives and just introduced them into your life and made you feel for them. And I think the word I've seen most often used to describe his music is empathetic, and something that we need so much in this world today. So, loved him. Let me also comment on a couple of things, a couple of the threads that we had. You guys are really good at responding to those discussion things. I don't know why I'm not doing more of them. I guess that's what I should do rather than try to meet on Monday, which we could try to do. But just to recap some of the insightful things you had to say about those things that I brought up. Number one, the Beatles. I think that the reason, and a lot of you articulated some of these things, the Beatles were so successful is number one, songs. I think that's everything in this business is songs. And they had 2 or 3 really, really, really great songwriters. And if you look at their output, whether you like the Beatles or not, if you look at their output, the amount of really tremendous songs that they did over a 7-year period, it's just amazing, unprecedented, will never happen again. Hundreds of songs, literally, within a 7 or 8 year period. And something I like to say, I don't know if I've given this spiel before, but the way they became great songwriters, if you look at the great songwriters that we have in this business, one of the things that helped to make them great songwriters is that they played a lot of great songs. There you go. They played a lot of great songs. Almost every artist, every band, everything when they started out were cover bands. So somebody like the Beatles, they played songs from other people from 1957 to 1962. They just played every great rock and roll song every night. They played in Hamburg 6 hours a day for 3 years. And when you play, and Bob Dylan was the same way. Bob Dylan used to say he'd make friends with people based upon their record collection, so he could listen to stuff so that he can play those songs. He had no designs to be a songwriter. He just wanted to play old-time folk songs and just know as many songs as humanly possible. But what happens to some people who are geniuses is that when you play great songs over and over again, you start to get a feel for what makes songs great, what makes songs great lyrically, melodically, rhythmically, whatever it might be. And so you sort of absorb all of that, and then you imitate it, and you steal from it, and you embellish it, and you put your own stamp on it, and you become a great songwriter that way. And one of the things that I lament is that people don't play cover songs. People get a band together, and 6 months later, they're playing 20-song sets of their own original material. What is the likelihood that in 6 months you've written 20 songs that people want to listen to? It's not very likely. So I would encourage people to play great music. Play it till you absorb it and becomes part of you. It's really, really important. And Beatles were the biggest cover band ever. And if you go and look, this is something I should have done too, is if you look at some of their early albums, sometimes 30 to 40% of their album was cover songs. The Beatles, the greatest songwriters ever, put 3 or 4 cover songs on every album for a couple albums. And then another thing that made them successful was the fact that they blended all of this music. Most great artists blend several different genres together. And the Beatles played Motown, they played Burt Bacharach, they have a cover song from The Music Man, a musical on Broadway, Chuck Berry. So they have rock and roll, they have show tunes, they have pop standards, they have 50s middle of the road music, all that kind of stuff coming together and creating, really inventing, along with a bunch of other people, inventing what rock and roll became. So blending, really important. Also, they had great voices. I think it's all about voice and song. That's what I think. If you get a great voice and you get a great song, and I don't mean great voice like, technically great, just something attractive to listen to. And Paul and John, and even George, had tremendous, tremendous voices. You put great voices, and they harmonized well, put it together with a great song, and you got something there. And George Martin specifically was able to help them in a couple of ways. Number one, he was a classically trained musician, so he helped them on the musical side because none of them had any formal music training whatsoever. I mean, Paul McCartney maybe had a tiny, tiny bit. So his ability to help them compose, arrange, and just make their stuff better from a compositional and a musical point of view was really, really important to their success. Also, he was involved in making comedy records, and so he was very adept in the studio in creating different kinds of sounds, noises, etc., and being very inventive with how you produce things. And the Beatles utilized that. Every album they progressed to doing something different, unique, and innovative in terms of how things were recorded, and they couldn't have done that without George Martin. So I think if George hadn't been their A&R person and their producer, then they would have had some trouble being successful. And I do want to just harken back a little bit to the things that made many of the A&R people successful, is that being part of the creative process is really, really important to help an artist's development. And so you see the great A&R people were producers, or they were songwriters, or they were at least hanging around and creatively contributing to what the ultimate recording sounded like. So it's really important to get a little bit of musical knowledge, a little bit of technical knowledge as to what's possible in the studio and what you can do in order to be successful with A&R and helping people develop. Elvis also a blender of all different kinds of music, and it shows what really Memphis was. Memphis is the birthplace of rock and roll, which is a blending of all different types of music. Elvis was in the he's in the Country Music Hall of Fame, he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he's in the Gospel Hall of Fame, he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. No, not baseball. But it just shows you all the musical influences that he had coming into his music. Oh, I also want to say something about the Beatles. Their image is so important, that you have someone who resonates with the audience in one way or another. They had four separate images, the same way that helps to explain some of the Backstreet Boys and what's their names? Liam and what is their name? One Direction. Is that they had four people with four really distinct and kind of manufactured images that appealed to different people. So you had John, who was the smart one, and you had Paul, who was the cute one, and George was the quiet one, and Ringo, the clowny one. And so it's something for everybody. So it was that image times four was able to attract 4 times as many people as just a single artist might be able to. And then I want to say something about the U2 Beatles Doors thing, is that they had trouble getting signed. The people that signed them really didn't believe in them as artists and musicians necessarily, but they just saw there was something there. I want to be with these people. I want to hang with them. They're just interesting. I like watching them. I don't know what it is about them. And there is that kind of charisma thing that some people have that you can recognize right away. It's rare, and you know it when you see it. You know when it's somebody that you meet in person or somebody that you see, I don't know, on a TV show. My son yesterday said, "Dad, did you watch Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza?" Was that the name of it? I said, "Yeah, I watched it." And he said, "It wasn't that good, but you knew Ryan Reynolds was going to be a star." You just did. You just knew right away there was something different about this guy. The same way 30, 40 years ago, Tom Hanks was in a show called Bosom Buddies, where he and this other guy dressed up as girls so they could live in a girls' dormitory for cheaper than they might otherwise be able to. It was the stupidest show ever, but you watched it and you said, this guy Tom Hanks is going to be somebody. Tom Hanks. So certain people have it, and you got to look for that thing, because it really is important. You can start to surround that with all sorts of other things that you need once you have that thing that people just want to watch. All right, finally, oh my God, 23 minutes. Finally, I spent an hour this morning listening to New Music Friday, and maybe there's a couple of things maybe we can discuss on Monday. I'm going to start to send you some emails and maybe start some discussion threads over this weekend so that we can somehow make a meaningful discussion class on Monday or Wednesday or something. But I have so many things to talk about, and this quarantine's driving me crazy. I need to talk to somebody. Somebody call me quick. One of the things about New Music Fridays, you see that the immediacy that's possible in this day and age is that you have a couple of songs dealing with this current pandemic. And I'd be interested to know what you think about that. We have one by 21 Pilots. And then another one, which, oh shit, who's it by? Damn. And I'm swearing. What's wrong with me? I'm in the privacy of my own home. I can do that. I forgot his name, Alex something. I never heard of him. This kid, and it's a song called 6 Feet Apart. Compare and contrast those two songs and tell me which one you think, if either, are effective at capturing the mood that we have right now. But especially with this and so many other things going on in the world, why aren't there songs that all of a sudden is addressing something that's happening right now? Oh boy, I'm running out of storage again. What's happening to me? So I'm going to finish this. Tell me what you think about Selena's new song, Selena Gomez. The song by Oliver Tree or something like that called Let Me Down, which is kind of a Green Day-ish kind of thing, but production that sounds better. Charlie XCX, interesting song. Black Eyed Peas, who once absolutely dominated what the sound was like. Sound, they knew what sound captures people's attention, but it's moved past them. But they're trying their hand at a new song, and it's got a Latin, it's called Mamacita, so they're taking advantage of the Latin thing. Tell me what you think about that song. If they had done it right, I think it would have. That's the thing, when you listen to some of these songs that are coming out, you think, I know what they're trying to do. Did they do it? Did they accomplish it? And that's the same way I would think about all of these songs. The new song by Phoebe Bridges, Tash Sultana, who's tried to break through for a while. Lennon Stella, how many records can she put out before she hits, or they just forget about her? And I think every time I hear one of her new songs, I went, that's not the one. That's not it. The Strokes, Hayley Williams, who's trying to make a comeback and get a solo career going, and has a lot of devoted fans from her Paramore days. Gorillaz, Maddie and Tay, they're getting another shot. I don't know if that song does it. In the country world also, Tennille Townes has a new song out on the New Music Friday, which is not very radio friendly at all, and not very conventional, but interesting nonetheless. So anyway, I'm babbling now. So try to listen to some of those songs, try to pay attention to your email, get yourself a great artist to introduce us to, and let's go! Let's go! That's all for now. Love you.